What did the board vote to do today?
Today was a very exciting day. The board, after a lot of hard work, due diligence, planning, strategic process, voted to open the MPACT plan, which is the Mississippi Prepaid Affordable College Tuition Plan, for the fall of 2014, allowing the Treasurer's Office to, with the committees and the board members, to continue to explore the necessary steps to open it up correctly and in a very efficient and effective manner.
Will there be any changes in the program?
There certainly will. In order to be very diligent in how we open it up, certainly we'll have to look at pricing of the contracts and making sure that they're done correctly. That being a big key factor. We'll look at investment options. We'll look at the options that the participants may choose from. The committee has already looked at streamlining that process down from several options, 54 options, down to 22. And that will make a huge difference, make it easier for participants to be involved.
For a little background, why was it closed in the first place?
It was closed originally because there had never been an actuarial audit done of the account. So the numbers initially showed that we were in certainly a difficult fiscal time and that we needed to reevaluate if this fund was actually viable and sustainable. That was the basis for the audit. You have to remember that across the country there are very few programs that are open, basically because there was no sustainability. They could not get the investment returns to match up what the participants' outlay costs would be. So we did that to evaluate where we stood, and it proved that we certainly needed to make some changes in our plan. We needed to reevaluate how we move forward. And so that was the original premise to do that. Now we historically have only made about 5% on that plan in investment earnings since the inception of the plan. So if you have an actuary that says you have to make 7.8% and you're not meeting those goals, then you have to look at that gap and you'll have to look at how we can be very prudent and diligent to close that gap. And what do we do from a fiscally responsible position? So that was the basis on why we deferred enrollment in 2012.
Is the assumed rate of return going to change? Currently it's at 8%. Will that be lowered or increased? Or
the board, since this has been going on, has already voted to decrease the assumed rate, the assumption, down to 7.3%. To get it more realistic, because if you continue to leave those very high, your gap continues to stay very large. So we still have to get to a very realistic mode. So we've already made that adoption to 7.3.
And about the rate of return, how come, I'm about to get real technical here for a second.
Okay.
How come the PERS rate of return is out, because it's been 8% or better, how come it's outperformed the MPACT return for so long, so much better?
Well, there are a couple of factors. You have to remember this is a smaller pool of money. And you have to remember investment is different as far as when you've got over $22 billion of investment. You have the opportunity to move it and parlay it into different investment earnings. We're very limited in what we can do in our investments. We sent a bill over this year to have those buckets expanded so we could provide more buckets of money to invest in, to obtain better interest earnings. And unfortunately it did not pass, but it would certainly have helped our opportunity to bring in more earnings for the program.
It's pretty basic, but for people at home, they've got kids and they're thinking about saving. What does this mean for them?
Well, this means that there's going to be a plan reopened so that they have the opportunity and the funding and would like to prepay the tuition for their children under these new contracts, this new pricing, then it's an option that will be available. So, the big issue is how do we invest in our children? Well, the real basis is if we ever invest in our children and put money up for them to go to college, then the odds are they're going to go to college because somebody believed in them. And so that's why we think it's important to at least have this particular option. Then we do have the MPACT, the Mississippi Affordable College Savings, the 529 plans are open, which are very good as well. Again, it's investing in our future, it's investing in our children and our workforce.
And for, again, pretty basic, but for them, why do this versus just putting away themselves?
Well, this is an option that certainly gives them a better rate because if you're locking at tuition now, and you may not have a child going to college for 17, 18 years, it's a phenomenal investment to be able to do that for that child. So certainly it's awfully hard to find an investment that will pay out long term and get the benefit as college tuitions continue to rise. And this board has no control over the increases either from the Universities of Higher Learning or from the community colleges.
Y'all haven't decided on the pricing rate.
We have not. Those are some opportunities that are being looked at and put through the rules and regulations because we need to determine, what contract pricing is correct, how do you factor in the risk assumption, and how do you look at the investment earnings down the road. So, we are not there, but this vote today gives us the option to go ahead and move forward and continue to look at those paths and those particular numbers on where we need to be for pricing.
It will most likely be a little higher than what we were seeing prior to the closing of the program.
Yes, I think you'll see it higher, certainly because the cost of tuition has increased. And if you're going to factor in down the road as tuition increases, we'll certainly have to be very cognizant of that. So in order to be in line, we'll have to reevaluate how we make those prices work in line with the contracts.
And y'all have a time, you just need to do that by the fall. I mean, what's the timetable to do that?
The fall of 2014. We feel like that's a very good option for us to be up and going by then because you have to remember, it took 18 months to stand this plan up the first time it was ever implemented. So we now have to stop again, reevaluate, get new processes, new rules and regulations, and make that accessible to meet those parameters by the fall. Certainly have a great team, and everybody will be working very hard to get it up and moving at that time frame, but that everybody will be prepared. And so when we make the offerings, everybody knows where we are and what the plans are for the future.
What's the latest, most recent unfunded, the shortfall unfunded liability? What is it? What was the latest number?
Well,
it's kind of a moving target.
As I say, Bob, it's kind of a moving target. We have restructured since we've been here, and certainly we've been able to attain better investments, better earnings, and so the last time we looked at it was, and again, it's moving. We were funded at about an 80% level. It could have gone up or down a few basis points, but roughly around 80%. But let me go back again and say we're only one of 4 states that have full faith and credit MPACT type of plans. And the others are funded at over 100%, 101%, because they have maintained cash infusions or they have different contract pricing, so they've been able to stay at a much higher level. We're the lower of the 4 plans.
Now, when y'all reopen, is it going to, is that going to, are y'all going to be able to take care of that unfunded gap without some additional help? Have y'all thought about that? How's that going to work?
Well, that's an excellent point. Roughly it's about $82 million short for the current participants. However, reopening this plan does not allow the cost to make up that $82 million by any means. Certainly as we have good quarters, good years, and investment earnings will help, but in no way is this plan set to take care of those shortfalls.
What do you do about that?
Well, it's a full faith and credit of the state plan of the state, and so the state, the leadership of the legislature will have to take actions to meet that.
What policy changes, aside from the pricing, do you anticipate making? For example, the consultants made several recommendations about bias loads and other things. What do you anticipate doing?
Well, we will definitely look at all those different particular areas and try to determine, based through the committees and the board, what are the best plans? How do we make those options more effective? And it ranges from any number of recommendations, be it the pricing, be it the investments, be it the plans that you can invest in, the options there, to how you collect on overdue accounts, to looking at hours. So it's a big compilation that has to be reviewed before it's a finalized plan.
What specific ones would you like to see?
Well, no question we have to look at the contract pricing. That is the biggest factor, and include the risk assumption as we move forward. Because as I just said, we have no control over the tuition increases. But yet we have to, at the same time, prepare for those down the road. So we have to look at that from our risk assumption status.
When you talked about, I'm sorry, you talked about streamlining, from I think 55 to, I wasn't sure what you were referring to.
Yeah. Currently, there are a tremendous number of options that you can utilize if you're in the MPACT, and you get to select those. They are extremely complicated, so we want to get it more streamlined so that if you're the user participant, it's an easier choice to determine if you want to invest more in the long term, if you have a child that's going to be 18 years out, or if you want to look at short term because you've got a child that's coming up in the next few years being in college. So it gives the participants the opportunity to decide what's the best plan for them.
So you said you just reduced those number of options to streamline it. Is that what you said?
We're going to reduce those, and we feel like that's a better availability for people to make the selection.
Are you concerned that you're going to price people, that you won't have the participants that you did beforehand as you have to raise the contract price?
Well, anytime you raise the contractual obligations, it could be difficult. However, what you have to remember is this is a good option. So there hopefully will be several participants who will come on board because they're looking down the road and they say, I can lock in for my child, my grandchild, and it's a much better plan for me. So our hopes are that we'll have many folks still come on board because it still will be an excellent education investment tool.
On the investment side, what about the way fees are charged by the portfolio managers, the people who handle the investments for y'all? Are y'all going to make any changes in how the fees are charged or not?
Well, we're very conscientious on fees and good stewards of our dollars in that regard. We have different managers now, and they've done an excellent job of bringing in more investment earnings and looking on how we can decide to move forward. Should we look at other options? We didn't get any, like I said, from the legislative plan that we put forth, but how we can evaluate what we have now and determine if those are the right investments we should be making now. But this is the day and age, always looking at fees, always looking at renegotiations, and trying to do the best that you can for the taxpayers.
Well, have the fees gone up or down in the last couple of years for y'all?
They have been very consistent. We get very good investment earnings based on our program managers. So they've been very consistent, and they've not been out of line by any means from other investment groups.
Have you seen any ups in numbers for MAX while MPACT has been down?
Oh yes, MAX, the Mississippi Affordable College Savings, has had a tremendous growth factor, over 61%. And that is such an exciting program. We have one of the best programs in the country with our 529 plan. I get excited just talking about it because you can invest a small amount, you can invest a large amount, you can do it monthly, annually, whatever you choose to do, and you can put in as little as $25. And again, that says, I believe in that child, I'm going to invest in their future, and so we've had a lot of outreach. We will continue to market that plan. We will continue to talk about payroll deductions so we can get companies on board and have that option available. One of the greatest things about that plan, which many other states don't have, you get a state tax deduction. And so that's very important. And if you're the prudent person looking for investment for education purposes for your child, grandchild, not only can you invest, then you get a state tax deduction. And it's up to $10,000 if you file single, $20,000 if you file jointly. So that's an exciting program that we're thrilled to start moving forward in our state.
Anything else that we didn't ask that you wanted to recap?
Well, I do want to say kind of in the big picture, the board has, I commend the board for being very committed, being very diligent, spending an enormous amount of time to research this and to see where we are on this pathway. And I think it's shown. I think going through the audit, getting to where we are today, everybody's very comfortable where we are. Personally, I would do it over again because I think we did the right thing. And when you do the right thing, it always becomes where you need to be. So I am pleased that we have taken this on. It was a challenge, but it has certainly come out to a very positive outcome that we all feel very comfortable. And always looking to alleviate the tax burden on our citizens. And I will bring up one more thing about how we are moving forward as far as looking for ways to alleviate any of the burden on our taxpayers. So recently we came out with a debt affordability plan. That is very important. It allows us to have a tool to look into the future, how we plan, how we look at bonding debt. Certainly it's a tool for the legislature. The rating agencies ask us to take a look at it. We never had one done in our state before. It's a very good, if you haven't seen it, very specific, very facts-oriented as far as here's what we have, here's what's available, just as a planning tool. I was recently visiting with several other treasurers and members of NAS, and we've gotten accolades from other investment firms about the pre-planning that went into this and how effective this is and how it's going to be a big tool as we talk to the rating agencies. And it's exciting to me that we are here. Recently, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves said, he was in the posture of wanting to lower debt. Well, certainly as a treasurer, I am too. And I think that's important. We're on the same page. And the tool is the debt affordability study does that. It talks about what are the true needs. How do you factor that into your planning for the future? So we're excited that we've gotten to that. And it's just another critical tool that we felt was important to provide to the leadership and to also look to our future as far as our investments and our state moving forward. And because we have a great rating right now with AA, and this is just another one of our tools that we have to make us very sustainable in the future.
Getting back to MPACT, just like, what would you say to those people who would say that the board's decision in fall of 2012 to close the program, it just with no new money coming in, it just caused a bigger gap? I'm sure y'all looked at that. What?
We absolutely did. That's a good question. What happened to the cost factor between 2012 and now?
Right.
I just want to give you a snapshot. We had about 200 and, let me look at my numbers here, 248 participants that entered the program right before we closed. They have already created an unfunded liability, which is at $228,000. $211,000. And so that shows that we were headed on a pathway that was continuing to cost the taxpayers dollars. So by ceasing that and deferring that enrollment, we can sure snapshot and see what the costs were. And if we continued along this path for the last 18 months, it would just increase our unfunded liability.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.